Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here, pleasure to be back home. We lived in the Redmond area for 16 years and taught for that little company, Microsoft, for a while. Doesn't mean everything I use anymore is Microsoft. I actually use an iPad or an iPhone. Anyway, how big is God? And I'll talk a little bit about our ministry as we get closer to the end, but I want to get into the meat of what we're doing here tonight, and that is, how big is God? Well, let's start here. Here's going to be our topics. Working with big numbers. How many like big numbers? What's the biggest number we know over here? Anybody know a big number over here? Bigger than a trillion? How about a Google? Yeah, that's a pretty big number. You know, that's big number so big right now it's bigger than our national debt. So that's a Google. How about a Googleplex? What is a Googleplex? So Google raised to the Google power. And a Google has 100 zeros in it. That's a big number. God created the small things. We're going to look inside the amazing cell. We're going to look at the software of life. Very small things to really big things, and then the incredible human body. We'll look at some of those things, and we'll end with answering the question, how big is God? So we have this. God created all things. Some people say that's a secondary doctrine. No, it is not. It is not a secondary doctrine. It's mentioned and implied in almost every book of the Bible. The hosts of heaven are bowing down in the book of Revelation saying, holy, holy, holy. Why? Because he's the creator of all things. This is not a secondary doctrine. It is his first miracle. We see it in Genesis 1, John, Colossians, Revelation, almost every book of the Bible. God's creator of all things. But on the other side, directly opposing this, is something called evolutionism. Random chance events called mutations are supposed to occur. Then there's some selection process that selects these. Incidentally, on Saturday at 11:30, I'll be speaking, doing a talk, which will show you there is no such thing as natural selection. We're going to discredit the whole foundation for Darwinian evolution. You don't even have to talk about fossils or anything else. It is dead at that point. So we're going to go through that. We're going to use a nice science approach. Then billions of years. This is what evolutionism is about. Billions of years. So we have design on one side and chance on the other side. We want to look at those. George Wald, Nobel Prize, made this statement. Time is in fact the hero of the plot. You got what he said there. Time. Just give it enough time. What we regard as impossible on the basis of human experience is meaningless here. Given so much time, the impossible becomes possible, the possible probable, and the probable virtually certain. One has only to wait. Time itself performs the miracles. Time doesn't do anything except make us forget, does it? So what we're going to do here to start with is I want to test your credulity factor. Can we say words like that in a church? Credulity. Now, what does credulity mean? Your willingness to believe something on very little evidence. That's what we mean by credulity here. So we're going to test your credulity factor here. I got 4 cards here. Each one has a different color circle in it. Red, green, blue, and yellow. I'm going to turn them over, and I'm going to shuffle them. This is a little what we call PowerPoint magic. I need a volunteer. Let's see. Thank you, you moved. That's what we do in the military. You move, you volunteer. Which number card is the green one there? 1, 2, 3, or 4? 3? You're exactly right. Pretty good there. Not bad. Let's do this again. Thank you. You moved right there. Oh, Bill, you moved. Oh, you moved. Where's the green one?
3.
3? Pretty good. Not bad. Suppose... Now, how did they both know that? How did they both get that one right? Especially you got it right. How did you know that? Or is it maybe I'm doing something up here? Did anybody think about that? I used to remember I worked at Microsoft. I know how to break these things. Nobody knows how to fix them. Let's do this. Let's go back to that credulity factor here. In other words, here's another way of saying this. How gullible are you? That's what we're really talking about here. Let's suppose we had some dice here, a pair of dice. If I were to roll a 7 2 times in a row, would you get suspicious? Probably not. That could happen. How about if we were playing a game and I rolled 7 4 times in a row? Would you get suspicious? Something's not right. How about if I rolled it 10 times in a row? Folks, if this was 1881, you would shoot me, wouldn't you? Something is not right here. If I'm going to roll 7 10 times in a row, you're going to get very suspicious. In other words, you're not going to think this is very credible. Something is wrong with the dice. So we're checking your credulity factor here. Probability. We're going to talk about that. Probability, credulity. How possible is it for something to happen? Well, we have probability all around us. We see it in medical fields. Does that scare you? Well, he's probably going to make it. We're not sure. Insurance, gambling casinos, advertising, computer technology, operations research, communications networks, genetics, space science. We have probabilities all around us. And we also see evolutionism is full of probabilities. Let's look at evolution here. There are 3 main areas of evolutionism. One is cosmological. That is the beginning of the universe. Where did the matter come from to create everything? How did the stars get there? Where did the galaxies come from? Then there's the chemical evolution, which is dealing with the origin of life. Then there is the biological evolution, which is sometimes referred to as Darwinian evolution. We're only going to talk about one of them here. That's the chemical evolution, the origin of life. We're going to look at some probabilities there. The question is the origin of life by naturalistic processes possible? Is it even probable that a living cell could happen by random chance processes? That's what we're going to look at. So how successful have scientists been in their attempts to create life? And secondly, what is the probability of that event occurring by itself? Well, how good have scientists done? Franklin M. Harold, former professor of biochemistry, an evolutionist, way of the cell. The origin of life is also a stubborn problem with no solution in sight. That doesn't sound like they got very close yet, does it? How about Hubert Yockey, PhD in physics, evolutionist. A great deal of effort has been expended in finding theories for the origin of life without success. Getting a little hint here? Donald Johnson, PhD in chemistry and PhD in computer information science. As far as science knows, the law of biogenesis, life comes from life, is still valid. In other words, no one's ever observed non-life producing life. And how about this one? John Aston, PhD in chemistry and professor of biomedical sciences. Once a simple organism is dead, it cannot be made alive again. This is a straightforward scientific observation. Evolution, however, requires not only the equivalent of a dead organism being made alive, but that the organism and its complex components and information systems must form in the first place by random processes. And that has never, ever been observed. So our scientists, in other words, cannot even create one single cell. And it's going to get worse. So let's do a little mathematics here. Anybody recognize that formula? I know some of you do right away. It's your probability is how easy it is to get a 7. You got 6 combinations to get a 7 out of 36 possibilities. Is that good odds? Well, the house will win, let you know. So, big numbers. There's what 1 trillion looks like. 1 followed by 12 zeros. How big of a number is that? Well, it's not real big when you look at some of these other numbers. When you get trillion, quadrillion, quintillion, septillion, it goes on and on, all the way up to a Google and a Googleplex. But when we look at a trillion, it's a pretty big number, though. How big is that? If you were to take a $1 bill and stack up 1 trillion $1 bills, that's 67,000 miles. That's a lot of money, isn't it? A trillion is a very big number. So let's look at the amazing cell. When I teach on cells, I like to make it a little more military. I just happen to like military things. So this is my description of a cell. It's got energy generators, invasion guards, transport systems, food factories, protective barriers, waste disposal systems, communications links, and machines that manufacture their own replacement parts. And that is an accurate description of a cell in military terms. Bet you, how many were taught that? You missed all the good stuff. Now, cells are made up of millions of components. We got DNA, RNA, proteins, ribosomes, organelles. How many got excited when I said those words? Anybody get excited about that? Yep, okay, got one. We only need to talk about proteins. That's all we need to talk about is the protein. We don't have to discuss any other component of the cell, just the protein. I want to show you 6 requirements that affect the formation of one single biological protein. 6 requirements. Number 1, there's hundreds and hundreds of different types of amino acids out there. Where do these amino acids come in? Well, amino acids are what make up a protein. Amino acids make proteins. And there are hundreds of different types of amino acids, but only 20 of them are used in life. So there's a probability problem right there. You can only get, of those 20, if you're going to make life, you can only use those 20 of the hundreds of different types of amino acids. So what's the probability of that we have to look at? Then, amino acids come in 2 shapes, just like we have left hand, right hand. Left and right hand are about the same, aren't they? 4 fingers and a thumb, but they're not really the same. Look what happens when I put one hand behind the other. The thumb and fingers are on the opposite sides, aren't they? So your left and right hand are what we call mirror images of each other. And amino acids come in 2 shapes. Guess what we call them? Left-handed amino acids and right-handed amino acids. When you take chemistry, we have other names for them, more technical names, but predominantly what you're going to see is left and right-handed amino acids. What's the difference between them? Well, just like our hands, they're made up of the same components, same atoms. And also like our hands, left and right-handed amino acids are mirror images of each other. Now, why is that so important? Well, that's important because every single amino acid and every protein in your body is left-handed. And you have trillions of these in your body, and every one of them in every protein is left-handed. There are no right-handed amino acids used in biological proteins. Do you see another probability problem there now? This is not going to be easy on evolution. Every experiment we have ever done has always ended up with an even mixture of left and right-handed amino acids. In other words, the natural tendency is always away from life, never towards it. So how could it ever get started? And it just keeps on getting better. This is an example of Romans 1:19 and 20, right here. Romans 1:19 and 20. God has given us all the evidence, and no one has an excuse for not believing. Just look at the protein. All the amino acids are left-handed. You got trillions of these. They're all left-handed. The natural tendency is always away from life. And when you die and you become as dead as you can be, and that's going to be pretty dead, you know what happens to your 100% left-handed amino acids? They start reverting back to a mixture of left and right-handedness. What have our scientists been able to create? Death. That's all we can make is death. No one can figure out a single biological protein. Now, do you see why we don't have to talk about those other components? It's a dead issue right there, folks. Only left-handed amino acids are used in biological proteins. Then number 3, the amino acids all have to be in the right order. There's another probability problem. Where do we put the math behind all this? Then the so-called primordial soup would have been very diluted with some of the correct amino acids in there, many of the wrong ones. You get one of the wrong ones, you got to start all over again. And we need an energy source to make all this happen. And it can't just be raw energy. Here's a problem they don't talk about in the schools. Yes, we live in an open system. We have the sun comes down and gives us all the energy we need. No, folks. They forget a major step. It has to be usable energy. In other words, you have to have some mechanism there that's already built that can capture that raw energy and convert it into usable energy. Where did that thing come from? See, evolutionists do nothing but simple stuff sometimes. They just wave a magic wand and say it can happen. They're not teaching the science to our students anymore. What they are teaching is evolutionism. That's why you're here tonight. We need to make a change in our students. Many of our Christian students are leaving the church because they're not being taught. And number 6, there's the problem of oxygen and water. Guess what oxygen does to amino acids if they're out there in the open? Destroys them. Pulls apart the chemical bonds. If there's no oxygen out there, it means we have no ozone. That means the ultraviolet rays that come down and just turn everything into crispy critters. Everything's dead. So with or without oxygen, life cannot start. And water is one of the worst places in the universe to get a protein. Why? Because water has a process called hydrolysis. Hydro means water. Hydrolysis means water splitting. As soon as any amino acids may have bonded together within the oceans, within a matter of weeks, that have all been destroyed. So life cannot start with or without oxygen, and it cannot start in water. And they can all be left-handed ones. They all have to be in the right order. This is going to be an enormous probability problem for the evolutionist. So let's flip a penny. Now, don't do this in junior high because it doesn't turn out to be much of a probability problem. It turns out to be a neuromuscular exercise to be able to flip the penny and find it. So, how many heads in a row are we willing to accept as a chance occurrence? Now, what are the chances of getting all heads every time we flip a penny? Well, how many times, probability-wise, do you have to flip a penny to get one head? 1 and 2, right. Flip it twice, probability says you're going to get an even amount of heads and tails. How about if you wanted to get 2 heads in a row? That's 1 in 4. How about 3 heads in a row? That's 1 in 8. Do you see the sequence now? 2 to the first power, 2 to the second power, 2 to the third power. How about if we wanted to get 100 heads in a row? Or 8 heads in a row is 256. How about 100 heads in a row? How many times we have to flip that penny, and this is your homework assignment. I want you to carry this out tonight. I want you to keep flipping that penny until you get 100 heads in a row. Well, that'll be 2 to the 100th power. Do a little math on that. That turns out to be 10 to the 30th power. How many times do we have to flip that penny to achieve that? 300 million times a second for 1 quadrillion years. Let's just get 100 heads in a row, folks. Anybody want to try that? No. See, the chances of getting 100 heads in a row are very similar to getting 100 left-handed amino acids in the right order. Think about this now. Because what's the probability of proteins, or amino acids in a protein? 50% left-handed, 50% right-handed. So it's a very similar probability here. Now, proteins range in size from about 50 amino acids up to about 30,000 amino acids. Let's just take a very small protein of 100 amino acids, because that'll make it simple for the math. The probability of getting a small protein of 100 left-handed amino acids is 10 to the 30th power. That's the number that looks like that. That doesn't look good at all right there. Now, that's not the end of the story there. How believable is that? Well, it might happen. But there's more. See, commercials can be good for something. There's more. See, the number 10 to the 30th just measures the possibility of getting all left-handed amino acids. Order's important too, isn't it? They have to be in the right order. In other words, you got to get amino acid 1, then you got to get the amino acid 2, amino acid 3. They have to be in the right order. Just can't have all left-handed amino acids. They all have to be in the right order so this protein folds the right way. Well, mathematician Emil Bothell proposed 1 chance in 10 to the 50th as an upper limit of that would occur. Anything beyond 10 to the 50th power, he says, It's never been observed, basically. It's beyond anything. Well, we've got 20 different amino acids. If you have a bag there with all these amino acids in there, you're going to reach in there. Now, you have to get a left-handed one, and it's going to be the amino acid that goes in position number 1. That would be 1 chance in 20. If all you have are the 20 amino acids, let's just say the 20 amino acids used in life. We're not talking about all the other ones that are not used, but just the 20. We're going to make it simple for an evolutionist. You just have the 20 different ones. That's all you use in life. You got to reach in that bag. You got to get the first one. Okay, that's 1 in 20. How about if you got the first 2 reached in the bag and got the first 2 in the right order? Well, that's each one has a 1 in 20 chance. That mathematics turns out multiply the 2 together to get the first 2 in the right order be 1 in 400. Okay, that's not too bad. How about to get the first 3 in the right order? Remember, they have to be left-handed in the right order. Multiply that together, that's 1 in 8,000 possibilities to get just the first 3. How about all 100? Now you got to reach in there, blind it, pull out the amino acids, and all 100 have to be in exactly the right order. If you get one in the wrong order, you got to start all over again. That's 20 to the 100th power, which converts to about 10 to the 130th, which is a number like that. You know, the total estimated number of atoms in this universe is 10 to the 80th power. That's the total number of estimated atoms in the entire universe. Are we beyond that right now? This does not look very probable at all. It is beyond anything anybody has ever observed. Therefore, if somebody comes up to you and says it can happen, it is not based on any known science. It is nothing more than a faith statement. That's all evolutionists can use at this point is faith. It is not science, and it is not a theory. Theories must be observable. This is nothing more than faith. And incidentally, all of Darwin, his whole idea, rests on the possibility of that first cell happening by chance. And we can't even get a protein. Isn't this great news? This is what our junior hires need to know before they get to high school. Every church needs to be teaching this in the Sunday school class to the junior hires. Anybody like silver dollars? If you were to just take 10 to the 21st silver dollars, stack them up, that's 120 feet deep throughout the whole United States. We're only 10 to the 21st power. We've got to get up to 10 to the 130th power. Just to give you an idea of these large numbers. Let's talk about credulity again. Boeing 747. Over 5 million non-flying parts. Does that give you confidence to fly one of those things? Now, one of those parts flies by itself. What makes it fly? Design and organization. This thing here called a cell has billions of non-living parts. What makes it alive? Design and organization. And one of those parts happens to be a protein, and there's thousands of proteins in there, and we can't even produce one with our best technology. The cell. Let's have a little competition here. Just think what a protein looks like. They fold. They're three-dimensional folds. A protein does what it does by the way it folds. If you get a right-handed amino acid in there, it causes it to fold the wrong way, and it can cause maybe no damage, or it could be devastating. So proteins do what they do by the way they fold. Have a little contest here. IBM Blue Gene, fastest computer ever built. And we're going to compare that to one protein. IBM Blue Gene, 64 cabinets, 131,000 CPUs. How many recognize what a CPU is? That's a lot of brain power in there. 131,000 CPUs in there. Just trying, anybody computer like to coordinate all that and make it work? That's not a job I'd want to have. The timing considerations are immense. 200 trillion instructions per second. Nothing matches this, folks. This is the top of the line. How long did it take that computer to figure out how to fold one protein? 1 year. How long does it take a cell to fold that one protein? Less than a second. We're not even close to the miraculous technology inside a cell, are we? Not even close. Scientists, astronomer, mathematician, probability of a single cell, they estimate at 10 to the 40,000th power. And they make this statement: an outrageously small probability that could not be faced even with the whole universe consisted of organic soup. And that's a very true statement, folks. Don't ever let evolutionists say probabilities don't matter. Yes, they do. Evolution is full of them. But there's more. There's still more. The living cell. Our human body has about 60 trillion of these cells in them. About 60 trillion. Depends on the book you read. How long would it take to assemble 60 trillion cells at 1 per minute? Now, we're not even talking about getting the right order. Just to assemble and put together 60 trillion cells. Don't worry about what it looks like when it's all done. Just connect 60 trillion of them. Anybody have an answer? It's probably obvious, isn't it? 114 million years just to put 60 trillion cells together. But order matters, doesn't it? Because we got to think about things like you got to get a brain, you got to get the eyes, ears, arms, liver, kidneys, you got to get all those things, and they all have to be in the right order. Now, what would that do? Folks, that would be beyond trillions and trillions of years to have that happen. So when you start looking at the numbers and start looking at the real science, evolution is simply not possible. So now let's turn to DNA. John Sanford, PhD in genetics. There is no information system designed by man that can even begin to compare to DNA. Hard drive, 340 gigabyte. That's not very big these days, but 340 gigabyte hard drive. One DNA molecule is over 5 billion times more compact than a 340 gigabyte hard drive. That's an incredible amount of information there. The DNA molecule itself contains more, now get what I'm saying here, contains more than 100% information. What, Mike? How can you do that? No, we don't count for extra credit. This is an amazing thing. Let me give you another homework assignment. I like homework assignments. Write a one-page story tonight. Just covers the whole page, one-page story. Then when you're all done, shift everything one space to the right. Now, if you start with an A in the first word, maybe the first word's about. The A now becomes the second letter. And the last thing on the page, which would probably be a punctuation mark, becomes the first thing on the page. Everything shifts one to the right. And it makes a brand new, coherent story. Could you do that? DNA can. It can do a phase shift and get a whole new sequence of information. It's an amazing molecule. How compact is it? If you were to take a 2 by 2 inch slide, just a 2 by 2 inch slide, fill it with DNA, that could hold 7.7 million Bibles. That's enough to go from the earth all the way to the moon. That's the compactness of the information in DNA. Nothing we have can compare to it. But there's still more. Getting tired of this guy? Let's talk about special design. Let's talk about the big things now. Design. Anthropic principle, the Greek word for man. The assumption that the chemical and physical properties of the universe are especially designed for the well-being of mankind. Let's start here. Now, don't worry about the names I'm using. All these big things like electromagnetic and all that. But I just want to point out the tremendous design in this universe. How everything must be just right, or you're not here. A proton is 1,836 times more massive than an electron. If the electron to proton mass was slightly larger or smaller, molecules wouldn't form and you wouldn't be here. Isn't that amazing? That happened just perfect. The electromagnetic coupling constant binds electrons to protons. If it were slightly smaller, be no electrons. No electrons, we're in trouble. If it were slightly larger, an atom could not share an electron orbit with other atoms. In either case, life would not be possible. There's two great coincidences. Just a lot of luck. The strong nuclear force, is that the strongest of the four major forces there? Sure, could call it the strong force. It's interesting. The strong force has a very, very limited distance it can work. But it's the strongest of the forces, but only works a very minute distance. The strong nuclear force holds together the particles in the nucleus of an atom. You know why we need that? Because these protons, if you're going to get multiple protons in there, guess what kind of a charge protons have? Positive. You know what like charges do? They repel each other. That's why there's a strong force to hold them there. They're so close together, we need this strong force to hold those protons together in the nucleus. If it was slightly weaker, multi-proton nuclei would not hold together. Isn't that great that this is a third piece that just happened by lucky circumstances? Then the Earth just happens to be the right sized planet. The diameters, depending on where you measure it, at the equator or the polar regions, about 7,900 miles. Circumference about 24,900 miles. Our Earth just happens to be the right size. If it was smaller, we wouldn't have sufficient gravity and we'd have a leaky atmosphere. It'd all leak out. That wouldn't be very good for us either, would it? Thank goodness we have just the right sized planet. The Earth's gravity, axial tilt, rotation period, magnetic field, crust thickness, oxygen-nitrogen ratio, carbon dioxide, water vapor, ozone levels, all just happen to be just right. And we do tilt, don't we? That's why when you walk down hallways, you tend to go like this a little bit, don't you? Well, when you get older, you do. The Earth and the Sun, the distance between the Earth and the Sun is just right, about 93 million miles on average. Any closer, we'd be too hot. Any further away, we'd have a lot of winter. Our sun just happens to be the right color, the right size, and the right type. If it was red or bluer, we wouldn't have any photosynthesis mechanisms. If it was larger, there'd be too much energy radiation. Smaller, the range of planetary distances able to support life, we would not be in it. We would not be in the habitable zone. Are you starting to see? There happens to be a lot of lucky circumstances that happened, or maybe there was a purposeful design here. The Earth, Moon. Without the Moon, we wouldn't be here. The Moon's gravity pulls on the Earth's oceans, creating tides, which acts as stabilizers for our climate. If the Moon was close to the Earth, guess what would happen to us? We'd die twice a day, wouldn't we? With the tremendous tides. If it was any further away, it would reduce the tides, and we'd probably have no marine life out there, be stagnant. The distance between stars affects our orbits of the planets. The average distance between stars where we are in the galaxy is about 30 trillion miles. If the distance was slightly smaller, gravitational interaction would be devastating. And everybody see where you are there? You can wave to yourself. Just as our location in the solar system is very important, so is our location in the galaxy. If we were too close to the center, we'd all die. Too far out on the edge, we'd be in trouble there too. We just happen to be in the right place in our own galaxy. We looked at these things. Probability of a protein, probability of life, information in the DNA, the atom, proton, electron mass, electromagnetic strong forces, conditions of the Earth, gravity, tilt, air, the sun, the right kind, the right size, right color, the moon, the right size, the right distance, star distance, and galaxy. Let me ask you a question. Any of those look like they happen by random chance? Every time we see a bridge, we know with certainty there was a designer, don't we? Every time we see a skyscraper or a building, we know with certainty there was a designer. The same for computers. How about a cell then, which is more complex than anything mankind's ever made? I think it's an insult to our intelligence to say that happened by random chance processes, when it's many more times complex than anything we can come up with. How about somebody like Usain Bolt there? He's not a random chance. That's called purposeful design, folks. This is called real design. It's not the appearance of design. It is real design. Evolutionists are afraid to say design. It's one of their non-words. So they coin it appearance of design. It is not the appearance of design. If the evolutionists say that is only the appearance of design, then we got to hold them to that. How do you know that's true? Because everything we see out there that's complex, like buildings, bridges, computers, we know there was a designer. How can you say something more complex than any of those is not really designed? If you're going to make that statement, prove it to me. Until you can prove it to me by observational evidence, your statement is without merit. It should never be believed. That's how we handle that one. That's how we handle the appearance of design. We make them accountable for that statement. So, Isaiah 45:18. For thus says the Lord, who created the heavens, who is God, who formed the earth and made it, who has established it, who did not create it in vain, who formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is no other. Colossians 1:16 and 17. For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible. Whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. Now when it says all things there, does it really mean all things? Yes, he clarified it there. By what? Visible and invisible things. He created them all. Proverbs 20, verse 12. The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both. 1 Corinthians 12, verse 18. But now God has set the members, each one of them, in the body just as he pleased. So how big is God? Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket and are counted as the small dust of the balance. That puts us in our place, doesn't it? How big is God? Romans 11:33. Oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments, and his ways past finding out. We don't compare to that, do we, folks? You can have 10 PhDs, you're not going to compare to his wisdom. How big is God? He counts the number of stars. He calls them by name. His understanding is infinite. How big is he? He made the heaven and the earth by his great power and stretched out arm, and there is nothing too hard for him. Jeremiah 32:17. How big is he? He's big enough to rule his mighty universe, yet he says he cares for you, can live in your heart. That's how big he is. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. I have two questions here. We just looked at a small piece here. Just a small piece. It's not hard to show you can't get a protein. I've done that in front of the NASA scientists. And they know very well they have no argument there. Something is wrong with our education system in this country. Drastically wrong. I'm not worried about fixing the public education system right now, folks. That should not be our endeavor. Our endeavor is clean up our own house first. We've got many Christian universities teaching forms of evolution billions of years. We've got many pastors and churches preaching forms of evolution from the pulpit. We have many Christian schools teaching billions of years to the students. That's our first priority, is clean up our own house first. How can we tell the world to believe God's word if we don't believe it? So who's going to train this next generation? And what are they going to believe? That's the question. Why do I ask that? The studies show very clearly that nearly 70% of our Christian youth are walking away from the church before they finish school now. 70%. That's a very high casualty rate. It's too high. It means we're losing the battle. What it means is we're being out-educated by the world. Something needs to change in Christian education. In other words, we need to start teaching our children a biblical worldview. I asked youth pastors a question. Youth pastors don't understand the importance of their position. I don't think they really do. They've got a very important position there, and they're not taking advantage of it. Most of them are not taking advantage of it. We basically have everything in place. We have the youth pastors, we have Christian schools, we have all the parents out there. We've got everything in place. We're just not implementing it. The question I'd like to ask youth pastors is this. At the end of 1 year of teaching those youth, what would you want your students to be able to do? I've only had 2 youth pastors across the country that have given me the right answer. The wrong answer is build relationships. That is absolutely the wrong answer for the number one reason. That's an important issue, but it's not the main thing they're there for. See, the number one thing the youth pastors need to be teaching the youth is this: to know the gospel, to be able to share the gospel, and be able to defend the gospel. That is not happening in our youth programs. It is not happening in our Christian schools either. And it's not happening in a lot of our seminaries. Many of our pastors graduating from seminary do not know the full gospel yet. See, the gospel, when I do the gospel, I start with John 3:16. Because we're all on familiar ground. Most people know John 3:16, or they've heard it. But they don't know John 3:17. This is critical. John 3:17 is critical for understanding the gospel. And what does John 3:17 say? God did not send His Son into the world to condemn the world, but the world through Him might be saved. That word saved is critical to understanding the whole gospel. It means something is not right. And we need to find out what is not right, why do we need to be saved, and how can we fix it? When you understand that, then you understand the gospel. But that word saved takes you back to Genesis. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. That God created all things. That means He is the ruler of everything. He sets the rules, the standards for how we are to live. He is the absolute sovereign ruler. He is sovereign. That means we can trust Him. He's the creator. And He also says in Genesis 1:31, His creation was perfect. There was nothing wrong. This is important to understanding the gospel. His creation was perfect. Then it goes on to say that He gave us one rule. He gave Adam and Eve one rule. Just one. And He said, if you break this rule, there's going to be a consequence. It's called death. So what did Adam and Eve do? They break the rule. God keeps His promise. Death comes to all. We are all separated now. What does Romans tell us? For all have sinned and all fall short of the glory of God. So we're all sinned. At this point, we are separated from a perfect and holy God with no hope. This is understanding the gospel. You must understand the bad news to understand and appreciate the good news. And we're not being preached that in our seminaries. Our pastors are not getting that. And that's why we have so many people standing up here in the pulpit not believing the biblical creation account. So we are separated from that perfect and holy God with no hope at this point in the gospel. But then you turn to Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. And it tells us there that we have the first promise of victory. The first promise of a Savior. And He fulfills that promise in John 3:16 when He sent His only begotten Son. Do you see the relationship between the Old and New Testament to understand the gospel? You cannot have one without the other. So God fills His promise there. And then He says this: there's only one way you can do this. And that is my Son. And it is a gift. I'm giving you this as a gift, which means it is not automatic. I can offer you a gift, but if you don't take it, then you don't have it. He says, here's my gift. Just accept it. That's what a gift means. You've got to accept it. So we accept that gift. He says, no other name under all heaven can save you. Only the name of Jesus. And then He says, these are my standards. You can't work your way there. And my standard says you've got to be perfect. And no one's perfect. You see, that gift is our only hope. It is our only hope. And then he says, I want you to repent. Over and over again, we hear this, repent. It's more than just saying, oh, I'm sorry. It is here. This repentance is here. Then he says in Romans 10:9 that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, listen to that now. Confess me. You're making a promise that Jesus Christ will be Lord of your life. That means heart, soul, and mind are given over to Him. That if you confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you'll be saved. Saved from what? Eternal punishment. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the gospel. That's the full understanding of the gospel. We need to know why we need to be saved. That's not being preached very much. Oh, we sinned. Adam and Eve sinned. What was sin? What caused all that? I got to go back to, He's the creator. He's the sovereign ruler. And He makes the rules we're to live by. And His creation was perfect. We have a lot of pastors and seminary professors don't believe His creation was perfect. That's why they don't understand the gospel. That's why we don't hear the gospel being preached much today in a lot of churches. You know, for every church we get in like this that believes it, there's at least 10 in the area that don't believe it. We're outnumbered, we're surrounded, and we're outfinanced. What an opportunity we have. What a great opportunity. This is what we do at Creation Training Initiative. We're very concerned who's going to train the next generation. We offer one-day training classes, a basic creation training class for teens and above. You'll learn how to start refuting evolutionism, how to defend your faith in that course. Then we have a one-day advanced apologetics course where we train you on things such as presuppositional apologetics. How can you call God good when He allows evil to continue? Give me any evidence for the existence of God. Those are the kind of questions we answer for you in there. Then we have a one-day teacher training. All we do in that one-day class is train you how to teach. Wow. Mike, don't they go to college to get that? Yes, they do, and I've been there too. You know what they don't learn in the Christian colleges, teacher colleges? How to teach the way the Bible says we're supposed to teach. This course is based on how did Jesus teach. The master teacher of all time. Then we have a 5-day training course. This is top of the line course. 5 full days of training. We offer this once a year. This year it's going to be held in Glorieta, New Mexico, just by Santa Fe, New Mexico. 5 days. You don't come and just listen. You'll have to demonstrate you can perform. You'll do presentations. We'll grade you on your accuracy of content. We'll grade you on your communication skills. We've had people who have never talked in front of anybody before in their life pass this course. Because in this course, we train you on communication skills. We train you in all the different areas of apologetics, creation apologetics. What does it cost? $570 to attend this 5 days. Now, what do you get for that $570? You get the full 5 days of training and over 300-page manual. You get a private room with private bath, and you get 3 good meals a day. I'm not talking hot dogs and pizza either. Get 3 good meals a day. The actual cost per person is over $950. We supplement that out of our own ministry. We have to raise $30,000 every year to put this on, just to break even. Our success rate, 100%. We've not had anybody not pass this course. We work in this course as a team. Over half our people that have graduated from this course now are out there teaching in their churches or around the country. This is the only course of its kind. Don't come and expect entertainment, because we don't offer that. Then we just instituted our Christian Educators Conference. It's a one-day conference that trains you what you're going to need to know in order to teach creation. The next one's going to be up in Arlington, May the 20th. Actually, the next one I'm going to do is in Arizona in March, where it's warmer. But the next one around here will be up in Arlington. Keep an eye out for that one. It's a full-day training class. It only costs you $30 for that one, and we feed you lunch. It's specifically for people who want to teach creation in a Sunday school, what you're going to need to know. We can't tell you how to teach everything, but we're going to show you some of the basics you're going to need to know in order to stand in front of a group of people and teach. We also have an electronic newsletter. We make it electronic because it's very easy to get rid of them, isn't it? It's called File 13, called Delete Key. But we tell you what we're doing, where we're going to be, some of the things that are happening around there. Also, if you'd like to help support us, we do need support. We have cards back there you can take and mail them back to us if you want. This takes a lot of finances to do this. These 5-day courses. The 1-day courses, we lose money on every one we go out because we only charge $45 for the other 3 1-day courses, and we feed you lunch there too. And you get a 100-page manual. And we pay our own travel expenses. We try and minimize the cost to churches on these things. So that's a little bit about us. If you'd like to get a hold of us, I have business cards if you want to get my direct cell phone number or direct email. But if you just want to email us, we got email up here, info@creationtraining.org, and we have a website. We have over 80 30-minute videos you can look at for free. Talked about science on there. We've interviewed other scientists and theologians. So those are all up there for free. So the question comes down, who's going to train the next generation? Will it be the world? Or is it going to be Bible-believing Christians? And it's our choice here, what we want to do. Don't let this stop here. We can do something about this. We need to wake the churches up around this country. They've become too much into their own thing and are not on the battlefield. Our Christian universities are not on the battlefield. They're doing a great job academically, but they're not training our youth for the battlefield. We have a problem, and it can be solved. John.
Well, thank you, Mike. And before we go to Q&A, I'd like to make some announcements of what's coming up here. And we'll take a little offering here for our speaker that we are already obligated for, but we certainly would appreciate help with that for our creation ministries. Or if you don't do that, you can help by purchasing some books and things like that, or just supporting our our speaker directly. I'd like to just finish with some announcements here before we go to Q&A. We'd like to have, remember there's a number of creation opportunities, one of which specifically for Mike Riddle. We have 2 more talks here on our website. You can see it, but Edgewater will be tomorrow. That'll be a long ways away for anybody here down in Federal Way. And for, but tomorrow, Saturday at 11:30 we'll be at a luncheon at the Mexican restaurant, Mazatlan, and you see me for that if you want to come. There's a little room left still for that. He'll be talking about the problem of ape versus humans. Are apes our cousins? ? And certainly not. And so, Ron, would you come forward too? And while we're waiting, while we're talking here, so. The major, just this week, having Mike Riddle speaking with 2 more talks. Pray for him and his topic. Next week, next Monday, next month, we'll having March 1st. We'll having a program at northwestcreation.net. You can see that it'll be at Cedar Park Church on Mormonism. That'll be look at northwestcreation.net for that information, and then in March, we'll be having Jonathan Sarfati here at this church, and also at my church, at Avondale Bible Church. So look at the websites for that, or get on the email server. NorthwestCreation.net has a list server for that you can get creation announcement, or just see Ron Payne here and get on our CAPS mailing email list if you'd like to do that. So Mike Riddle, we want to come back up for Q&A?
Yeah, if you want one of those brochures, what about the 5-day class? We have some glossy brochures back there. We have a 1-page brochure. You get more information on our website. We're coming out with a 4-page glossy brochure that explains everything. We even have a registration form there you can pick up if you want to look at that too, and the cost. So anybody have a question? Yes, sir.
I think you confirmed one of my suspicions that I've had for a long time, but I've never heard a cogent explanation as to the one slide you put up that quote saying that the time was the hero of the plot.
Yes.
All right, and that works out pretty good when you think of starlight and time, like I was taught in high school, which was a long time ago, and they said it was, the whole universe was 20 billion years old. And then by the time I got to college and I took some oceanography classes, it was down to about 17 billion years for the entire universe, and now it's something like 13.6 billion. What shrunk?
Actually, it's been getting older. I don't know if they went to 20 billion, but actually they keep adding billions and billions and billions and billions on because there wasn't enough time.
Yeah.
So time is the hero of the plot form. It works the miracles, but they forget about something called the second law of thermodynamics there.
Yeah.
It doesn't work very well under that law because the universe is what we call an isolated system. There's nothing outside this universe we know of adding anything into it. That means the universe as a whole is wearing down, losing its available energy for doing work. So if we're getting pretty old, there shouldn't be any stars out there.
Yeah, but then you were saying some of these processes, you were throwing out numbers that would take trillions of years just for that one process in billions of different processes.
Right.
And if it's taking like trillions of years, then even 20 billion years is a drop in the bucket. It ain't going to work.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
And you think of it this way. We got, I guess they estimate quintillions of stars out there now. And you read day 4 of creation, and it reads, and he made the stars also. It was so easy for him. In a day, actually, it could probably just an instant, he made all the stars. That's how big our God is. Next time you get a clear night and it's warm out there, look up there. Look at all those stars out there. Think of this. Many of them dwarf our sun in size. And he made all those. That's how big he is. We're just a tiny little speck that he cares for. Yes?
How should we refute the argument that he brought up there with light? Evolutionists say it's old because it took that long for the light to get here.
Okay.
Refute that.
How do you refute the starlight problem? How can these universes be only 6,000 years old and that light reach us in just 6,000 years when these galaxies are billions or millions of light years away? Well, you put them in a headlock until they repent. No. You don't even want to think that. Here's the question. I have different answers depending on whether you're a Christian or not. A Christian, I'm going to go to the Bible. From an evolutionist, I'm going to take a different tactic. I'm going to say, I'm going to answer that question. I'm using a tactic somebody else in the Bible used. I'm going to answer that question, but first let me ask you a question. Who did that? Starts with a J. E. Jesus, yes. Good. Could you tell me where your stars came from? If you will tell me where your light sources came from, the stars, then I'll tell you how that light got here. You know what they can't do? They can bluff their way through because they're going to say, oh, stars form all the time. How does that happen? Get these great big nebula out there, gas and dust clouds, and they rotate around and around and around. Yes, they rotate around. Everything's rotating around. As they rotate around and around, they begin to gravitationally collapse inward and keep collapsing in and eventually form a brand new star. And they give this a technical term. The technical term for this whole process is called baloney. Anybody that's had Physics 101 knows, reading this section on heat pressure, that will never happen. Because as those clouds collapse in due to the rotation, they also generate heat pressure. And the heat pressure we can measure is always stronger than the gravitational inward pull. It always causes the cloud to expand outward. Plus, it generates a magnetic field around it that pulls the cloud out. So why should I answer their question? Plus, they have problems. We have possible answers. They could be right, they could be wrong. But they have a bigger problem than we do. First of all, they're going to get their light source. Then there's the whole problem of the homogeneous temperature of the universe. That means all the light energy throughout the entire universe has to have interacted everywhere. There has not been enough time for that to occur. So why do we have a homogeneous temperature? About 2.7 Kelvin. They got two big problems, don't they? So I'm just going to put it back, and it's going to end up with, well, guess what? You have to accept by faith, and we have to accept by faith. Now, what does your faith have to offer me? And I'll tell you what my faith in Jesus has to offer you. Now, I'm not going to get in some great big technical discussion of time dilation. We can go there, but that's not going to get me anywhere. I'm going to break down their argument and show them that their attack is futile. They got a big log in their eye. They better take care of that one too. Isn't it wonderful what the Bible says now and then? Does that answer your question, satisfactory? Okay. In other words, I like to keep my answers simple. A lot of times when I'm in secular universities, they'll challenge me with questions, and I don't even have to answer them. Because I call them on their words and what they're saying. And show what they're saying is not a valid argument. So I don't even have to answer it.
I agree with you that the church has often forgotten the intellectual needs of religion. And it reminds me that Satan deceived in the Garden of Eden, but besides the intellectual deceptions, there's the emotional or
Yes.
deceptions, which is what usually the church teaches. It tries to teach you morality and stay away from temptations and things like that.
Yes.
But
Which are good things, but there's more to it.
yeah, but seldom. Could you address that? The two aspects of,
Yes, for a long time, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, we had these big meetings, and it was very emotional. We stopped doing the education. We got into the emotional issue a lot. The camp meetings where everything was just a lot of emotion, rah-rah. Now we've turned to the intellectual, but it's more of an intellectual based on the world. In other words, we're too afraid to say 6,000 years because the world may not like us. It's not very intellectual to say that. But we turn to these great academic universities, Christian universities, but they're not doing the teaching that needs to be done. The intellectual side of creation, intellectual side of apologetics. See, there's different forms of apologetics. And you can read all these books, they give all these philosophical terms. Let's make it easy. There's practical apologetics. Who did Cain marry? How could Adam name all the animals one day? How could the first 3 days be real days without the sun? That's practical. It's right there in the Bible. Then there's what I call the critical thinking side. We don't even do critical thinking in our universities anymore. I did this one last night. Three critical thinking questions. A power question. A critical thinking question about fossils. In other words, critical thinking can allow you to turn the conversation from being on the defense to putting you on the offense and them on the defense. In other words, stop focusing on their evidence and focus on the words they're using and call them accountable for them. Then we have the scientific foundations, like where did the matter come from to create the universe? How did life originate? Where did the dinosaurs come from? What about the Cambrian explosion? In other words, it's going after the foundations in science, so you don't have to get into all these nitty-gritty scientific terms. Pull the foundation from out underneath them. We're not being taught that kind of stuff. Then there's the presuppositional. And tomorrow, if you can make it down to Edgewood, my topic is, did God create evil? I'm going to tell you definition, what is evil? Where does it come from? Did God create it? And why does God allow evil to continue? It's going to be a full hour talk on just that topic. Why? It's the number one reason why non-believers will not accept the Bible. And where does it get taught? Very few Christian schools even touch it. Christian universities don't touch it. It's not being taught in Sunday school classes in most churches. There's more than a pastoral answer to this. There's a lot more to it. So and on Saturday, be there for that one, we're going to dismantle mutations and natural selection. We're going to take Darwin completely apart, and it's over at that point. We don't have to talk about fossils for apes and humans. Don't even have to talk about it. Just dismantle their foundation, it's over. In other words, tactics and strategy are very good. And I also like covert operations. I was trained well in the Marine Corps.
Sounds like a Marine.
Yes, I was trained well in covert operations, not only in the Marine Corps, unfortunately in business too. Yes. So, see, those are very good questions. Those are very important type of questions. What's wrong? Well, we've got the infrastructure there. We're just not using it in Christian education yet. So we got to wake people up. That's what we're trying to do with our ministry. 2 Timothy 2:2. Our goal is to train as many people as we can to teach this. And when I do one of my courses, you come to my course, if you want to pick this course up and teach it, I give you an entire electronic copy of the manual and all the PowerPoint slides to reproduce as much as you want for free.
Can I ask you a question about the training? Doesn't it help you train you to be a good mother and how to teach your kids, and also how how to teach a class, other classes too.
Yes, the teacher training class is ideal for that. I have people who've been teaching for 20 years come to that class and learn how to teach, how to measure your success as a teacher. You know, your job description as a Christian teacher is in the Bible. It's actually in the Bible. So I use the Bible for that whole thing there. Talk about motivational techniques. One of the greatest motivational pieces I've seen is right there in the Bible, Jesus with the woman at the well. You dissect that, the way he motivated that woman to want to know her real need by the questions he asked. Powerful stuff in the Bible about education. It changes how people... We even do a thing we developed at Microsoft, a group. I don't think we invented it, but we pirated it. See, in computers, you don't steal anything. You just pirate them. How to teach your students to retain information. We talk about that in that class. In other words, we have a 100% success rate in our 5-day class. Why? One of the things I do is I only educate for success. I do not tolerate failure. My goal every time I teach a class is 80% or better of my students will get A's. And I don't give anything away. My classes are tough. And if you get out of hand, I always have a push-up box there. Many people will visit that. That's my cure for it. I think push-ups would cure cancer too. Anyway, any other questions? If you want to help out, take a look at some of those brochures back there. If you want to help us out for what we're trying to do or stay in touch with us, you can sign up for a newsletter. You can have my direct email and direct cell phone number. I like to talk to people. And if you want to pick up one of those cards and take it home and pray about it, if you'd like to help our ministry.
And you have a website too, don't you?
We have a website, creationtraining.org. Very easy, creationtraining, all one word, .org.